everyone, Katja here. Welcome to Page Turner Weekly, where I bring you my recent reads, some translated, some not, updates on my reading projects, and news on translated fiction prizes and new releases. On a personal note, last week I mentioned these bookmarks on Charlie's Etsy shop. They've arrived super quick. Profits go on to the book trust. I'm looking forward to using these, and I will have a link in my video description if you'd like to get your own set. Lovely, thoughtful, personal touches. Now, if you want to jump straight into the book reviews or want to see the new releases, I've got chapters so you can go to whichever section really speaks to you the most. But first, I wanted to talk about what's inspiring me this week. So booktubers who seamlessly bring journaling into their reading lives. So that intersection of booktube and planetube, starting with the nerdy narrative, who does these fantastic YouTube shorts featuring her love for fountain pens and journaling, and it really inspired me. So next week I will have a video up for you about journaling. And if you're interested in this the way that I am, here's some channels that really have inspired me. Of course, as mentioned, the nerdy narrative, mostly booktube, but her journaling and fountain pen shorts are fab. Tiny Tiger Co. Love how down-to-earth she is, sharing the personal benefits of journaling and her honest take on what works and what doesn't. Simone, if you want technical detail as well as lots of others things, this is the one to check out. She gets the calipers out to measure pen barrels. Case in point, her review of the Bennu Daily Mate. This is just one of like 7 models. She showed us it takes nearly 6 twists to open this cap, and that is ridiculous if you consider that most fountain pens take about 2. So Katja, why are you holding that pen? Why did you buy it if it takes so long to open? Well, she also provides really balanced reviews, and the prose that she mentioned about this got me tempted and I went for it. I don't mind the number of twists in the end. Then we go on to Job's journal. His solo creative date video was brilliant. He's journaling, he's exploring LA bookshops. Such a great watch. Plant-Based Bride. Now, you've probably come across this channel. A great example of the overlap between booktube and journaling. Her channel started with bullet journaling. She's got close to like 200,000 subscribers and has transitioned this year toward books while still keeping a planner connection if you check out her recent video on the reading journal. So that also merges those two interests. And then we go on to new and recent releases. These are the books that caught my eye this week that have either come out in February or are coming out soon. So we start off with the February releases.
The Café with No Name.
A heartwarming atmospheric novel about a Vienna cafe in 1966 that becomes a quiet sanctuary for workers, artists, and market traders. I'm saying this as though I've read it, but it's what I'm expecting. I'm expecting community, resilience, and the beauty of everyday life. Totally different from the other new release that only came out yesterday, The Dream Hotel. And this has just been longlisted for the Women's Prize for Fiction, and I think it's on the radar for Gem of Books as well, because I joined the live show that she had with Charlie yesterday discussing this book. It has a definite speculative vibe, with Sarah returning home from a conference abroad, being pulled aside at the airport from the Risk Assessment Administration, who have garnered some information and have decided that she may be a risk to someone, so they want to detain and observe her. It sounds like a speculative mystery about the dangers of the technologies that are supposed to be making our lives easier and the purposes for which they could be used. There's no turning back. This is described as a powerful novel following 8 young women in 1930s Rome grappling with societal expectations, love, and ambition. Previously censored, now newly translated. The Rabbit Punch. A father-son story set in Rimini, exploring masculinity, ambition, and the quiet battles that shape a life. And then coming out soon, this month, we have got Mutual Strangers and Other Misadventures in Nanjing, and I just like the title in itself. Described as a darkly funny collection about Nanjing's underground literati, literary mischief, failed romances, and questionable karaoke nights. A Thousand Blues, a near-future Korean fable about two sisters trying to save their retired racehorse by training it for the slowest race ever run. So that sounds intriguing. It is sounding like a story about resilience and love in a world that's obsessed with speed. Sun. This one is unlike the other books. I don't think it's a translation. It just sounds like a fantastic collaboration. Anyway, following a psychologist, body language expert, Kari Voss, as she focuses on a chilling murder case that is set in the small Norwegian town of Sun. The case seems closed, but Kari senses something amiss, especially as it echoes something that happened years before involving her son's disappearance. It sounds like gripping Nordic noir, full of psychological twists and shocking revelations. Then in April, we get lost souls meet under a full moon, following a mysterious young medium known as the Go-Between, who offers clients one last chance to reunite with lost loved ones just for a single night under the full moon. And through a set of stories for 4 visitors, including these two, a man who is confronting the rival he betrayed and a woman seeking an old TV star. The way the blurb is written, it suggests it's about grief, redemption, and second chances. Then we have Vanishing World, and this one I've talked about before because I'm currently reading it. A near future world where natural conception is obsolete and sex is taboo, following a young woman who's caught between societal norms and a radical new community. Now, if you're in York, Waterstones has a book launch event in April, an authorless night of Japanese food, drink, and exclusive merchandise. I'll pop a link for bookings in my video description if that's something you want to do. Then we have Heartlamp out on the 8th of April, which is also the day that we're going to get the result that is which of the long-listed international Booker books are shortlisted. And we know that this one is on the long list. So we then have the anticipation of, will it make it onto the short one? Anyway, a collection of 12 short stories about Muslim women in southern India balancing sharp social critique with affectionate humor. That's the way it's described. First time that a book that was originally written in Canada has been shortlisted, longlisted for the International Booker. Anyway, we then have When the Cranes Fly South. This is a poignant Swedish novel about an aging man, his dog, and the fragile threads of family relationships. And every platform I have checked has given this rave reviews, like over 4 stars, close to 5. So it sounds extremely promising. And if you're on Goodreads still, because I'm not using Goodreads anymore, but I did see this when I was looking to see how well it's doing, it has got a giveaway on from the publisher, open for the next 5 days, only open to US residents, and 25 copies are up for grabs. So I'll put the link in the video description. In June, we get The Wizard's Bakery, and this is interesting because it comes from an author that I recognized. Anyway, this is written 15 years ago in South Korea, and it's now being translated. It is a 24-hour bakery that seems ordinary at first glance, but actually is extraordinary and perhaps magical. But does that magic come at a cost? Said to be a whimsical, bittersweet Korean novel about finding one's place in the world. The sound of this is super, and it's a total opposite of the book that I enjoyed from this author, The Old Woman with the Knife, about an aging assassin. So I suspect that maybe where the overlap in the style would be is that bittersweet, because she has this ability to provide something contrasting, the good and the bad, the sweet and the bitter, and just sort of like, it's difficult to describe, but I enjoyed it. The Passengers on the Hankyu Line. Now this again sounds like cozy Japanese fiction. On the scenic Hankyu commuter train, 5 strangers ride out their personal heartaches. A woman in a wedding dress with a secret, an elderly widow considering adopting a dog, a girl on the verge of leaving an abusive boyfriend, each grappling with life-changing decisions. And this is brought to us by the author of The Traveling Cat Chronicles, and I cried so much with that book. I have a feeling this is going to be a tearjerker too. And then I have got a few more, but they're way far off, like in September and October, so I'm going to hold those for another time. Rental person who does nothing. Imagine just being paid to exist, not to entertain, solve problems, or offer insight, just to be there. That's the idea behind this quietly radical book that's based on Morimoto's real-life service, where people hire him to do exactly that. Nothing. It's minimalist existentialism at its best. A quietly absurd critique of modern life, but also really tender when it comes to exploring issues like loneliness. So if you've already gone down the YouTube rabbit hole on Morimoto, this book doesn't add much. Those clips are also covering everything in this book, his personal reflections about his older siblings' trauma, chasing perfection as students and as employees, and which really sort of like strengthened this resolve in him when he goes into the work market to try doing nothing. And had I known that I already knew all of this because of the YouTube clips I've watched, I would have borrowed the book rather than actually buying the audiobook, because his story is fully out there, floating around cost-free on the digital tide. So just to be aware of that. And then Beyond the Door of No Return, historical fiction meets poetic reckoning as David Diop reimagines the real-life 18th century French botanist Michel Adanson as he searches for a woman who escaped slavery. This book moves between his notebooks and a larger narrative, challenging how we view history, who gets remembered and who gets to tell the story. And you can catch up on my live show discussion of the book with Roz and Tilly if you want a deep dive into the themes. Basically, it is thoughtful, layered, gorgeously written. I felt though the start was slow, but a quarter of the way in and I was hooked. Perfection. Look, it's not bad, but given the international booker judges hyping the longlist as offering something different, this felt weirdly predictable. Millennial expat couple Anna and Tom have it all, a bright plant-filled Berlin apartment, slow-cooked meals, Danish furniture, and a healthy sex life. Except, of course, the dream turns hollow and their curated authenticity starts feeling as artificial as Berlin's carefully edgy coolness. This book actually nailed it. How the city shifts from artsy to wannabe as big tech moves in, then from experimental to sleazy, then from progressive to outright unstable as landlords keep turfing people out of the homes for richer tenants. It does what it sets out to do. It's a scathing commentary on modern urban life. You could switch out Berlin for New York, London, or any overpriced it city, and the story stays the same: aspirational living and existential dread. A taut sociological novel about the emptiness of contemporary existence, perhaps. But is it groundbreaking? Not even close. If you want this theme done with emotional depth and a character that you can grab onto or feel, I would watch Russian Doll. 2 seasons, set in New York. Same message, but more interesting. For me, anyway. Then we have The Flick. Given my slightly scathing thoughts on perfection, you might assume minimalist theatre wouldn't be my thing. We've only got 3 main characters in here, but Annie Baker is like some literary fairy queen, spinning the mundane into something rich and multi-layered. So we've got the 3 characters in this rundown movie theatre. They talk, they clean, they exist. That's it, if on the surface. But in between the silences and the small moments, there's so much more. There's a bit of loneliness, class anxiety, unspoken desires, and even betrayal. The dialogue is so natural, it feels like we're overhearing the conversation. That said, there is one moment of high drama, and it involves a nightmare toilet situation. If you know, you know. So shout out to Angelia from Read and Reread for putting this gem on my radar. Subtle but impactful and with incredible character work. Just don't expect high action or major resolutions. The Details, a fever dream memoir of past relationships written like a series of Polaroids. Each section is about someone the narrator loved or felt deeply connected to. Lovers, friends, and fleeting figures. But it's really about memory itself, how we edit and rewrite our past. It's intimate, aching, and laced with that melancholy of looking back at someone who once meant everything and now barely exists in your life. I was surprised by how much I liked this. There were so many insights that just hit home for me. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And fragmented and nostalgic, but without being saccharine. And finally, we have The Last Unicorn, which I listened to. This is a classic. I spent years trying to track it down. It was out of print in the UK for such a long time, and then when it was quietly reissued in 2023, I totally missed it. And then I realized it, so I grabbed hold of it, listened to it. Great narration. Originally published in 1968, The Last Unicorn feels unlike most fantasies I've read. The prose keeps you at a slight distance, yet somehow you're completely immersed. A unicorn realizes she may be the last of her kind and sets off in search of the others, encountering magic, melancholy, and mortality. But this isn't the sanitized fantasy of childhood. It's full of longing and quiet sadness and grappling with aging, loss, and the fragile beauty of things that don't last. Now, I say sanitized version of fairy tales, but really some fairy tales can be grim. So it's not quite, grim, but it is melancholic, bittersweet, lyrical. It's a fairy tale for grown-ups. I reckon if you liked The Little Prince, you'd like this, but be aware that you're going even deeper. I hope that makes sense. And that's it for this week. Let me know your thoughts. Have you read any of these books that I've read or that I'm telling you are on my radar? Are they on your TBR? What are your thoughts? I would love to know. And especially if you're thinking like, oh, how could she disparage perfection? Because, well, I thought it was perfect. I would like to know. I love having sort of like a different perspective on things as well. Thanks for tuning in. Take care.